And it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start with some weapon-grade gaslighting from alleged comic Jimmy Kimmel. Here is the far-left purveyor of late-night disinformation engaging in some more disinformation, this time about his ideological bedfellow Tyler Robinson.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Yes, I'm sure the far-left loser moaning about supposed fascists and obsessed with trans activism with a trans boyfriend is a closet Republican, according to Kimmel. I mean, let's just disregard officials telling us what his ideology is, and let's disregard the alleged killer's own words. But Jimmy Kimmel wasn't done yet. He even mocked President Trump's grief for Charlie. Now, President Trump loved Charlie Kirk. Those close to him say he saw him as another son. But this is what Jimmy Kimmel had to say.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish, okay?
How a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish. You know what? I'd forgive the callous, hateful miscreant if he was just a little bit funny. He is supposed to be a comic. Now, this next gal is supposed to be some sort of a model. She was a contestant on a show called America's Next Top Model.
About Charlie Kirk. You like terrorism? Eye for an eye. I think the only thing that went wrong that day was that Trump wasn't standing behind him getting a secondhand bullet.
Model. She's as ugly on the inside as she is on the outside. That brings me to Jemele Hill, the former ESPN anchor, the race-baiting simpleton who continues to lie and engage in deliberate misinformation. Listen to what she says about the man charged with murdering Charlie.
In the wake of Charlie's murder, there was an incredible amount of angry discourse from the right, blaming the Democrats, blaming liberals, saying, you're the reason this happened. Only to find out, surprise, 22-year-old white dude, loved guns, raised by two parents, lived in a good home, dad is a minister, also a sheriff. Didn't check any of them boxes y'all thought he would check, did he?
Well, he checked the boxes I expected him to check, Jemele. He is a far-left, trans activist lunatic who regurgitates the same BS you do. He claims Charlie was spreading hate because the left called telling the truth hateful. His dad wasn't a sheriff, but he did appear to come from a decent family. It just shows that coming from a decent, God-fearing family isn't enough to inoculate a sick mind from toxic leftist indoctrination. And did Jemele really blame Republicans, conservatives for angry discourse? I mean, how dare we be angry that a brilliant young man was murdered in front of his children? How dare we call out those celebrating this sickening act of domestic terrorism? And be on guard for those who claim that this isn't a left or right issue, that this isn't political, that there isn't a clear motive. Those are lies, and we're not putting up with lies. We are not tolerating the left's bold-faced lies and gaslighting, including this from CBS.
5 days after Charlie Kirk's murder, the shooter's motive remains elusive. No writings left behind, vague secondhand testimony. That uncertainty and the risk of drawing sweeping conclusions suggests the murder may share similarities with recent violence not driven by an obvious political ideology.
No clear ideology, except Tyler Robinson told us precisely what his ideology is and why he targeted Charlie Kirk. There is zero mystery about the motives of Tyler Robinson or his political ideology. The only question is who else may have been involved. Now, let's hear from The View. Here is Whoopi Goldberg offering some sober analysis. She looks almost disappointed that Charlie's message will only grow stronger. Remember, it was just a few years ago that Whoopi was forced to apologise to Turning Point USA for falsely linking Charlie's movement to neo-Nazis. The ladies of The View have done plenty to incite the demented left.
And what assassins should always remember is just because you take somebody out doesn't mean the message is going to stop. Yeah. And it's important to keep that in mind.
Now, we've had plenty of examples of instant karma this week as hate-filled individuals have got their comeuppance for celebrating a great man's assassination. And here is another example. This young man thought it was funny to turn up to a memorial at Texas State University and do this. Incredible how tolerant the crowd there is of those antics, but he did get a dose of instant karma. Shortly after that incident, he was identified and promptly expelled from the university. And I don't feel one bit sorry for him. You want to engage in that type of cruelty, mocking not just the murdered, but those grieving his loss, you deserve to get expelled. Now, let's hear from ABC talking about the text messages of this alleged killer. Do you think they reflected on how his language echoed that of mainstream leftist figures from the media and the activist class and the Democrats? No. Instead, they were marvelling at how touching it all was.
What was on it, but also it was very touching in a way that I think many of us didn't expect. A very intimate portrait into this relationship between the suspect's roommate and the suspect himself, with him repeatedly calling his roommate, who was transitioning, calling him my love, and I want to protect you, my love. So it was this duality of someone who the attorney said not only jeopardized the life of Charlie Kirk and the crowd, but was doing it in front of children, which is one of the aggravating circumstances of this case. And on the other hand, he was, speaking so lovingly about his partner.
Joining me now is documentary filmmaker and commentator Ami Horowitz. Ami, much of the media's reporting on this issue has been appalling, and there's been no self-reflection about the role so many in the media played in using lies and hyperbole to demonise a man like Charlie Kirk.
Yeah, no question about it. And look, obviously, the lies and the falsehoods of the media are legion, and obviously there is no self-reflection. Look, they obviously, to say they dropped the ball is understating the amount of failure they did on this issue in particular. Look, they don't hide their agenda, and that's all I'm asking. Look, I'm not asking you to change your policies. Just hide your agenda for us, right? Just pretend, try to pretend to be even-handed. They can't even do that. And I think that a great example of that is the trans issue, because I think what we're seeing now is that this was certainly motivated or possibly motivated by this trans issue, because his boyfriend / girlfriend was trans. And the media continues to push the idea of trans violence, but not the trans violence that we've talked about, this being an example of that, or the mass shootings we've seen at Christian schools and other places by trans people. And in fact, when we should do a segment, by the way, on dumb crap that AI says, because I want to do a cursory cursory look on the amount of trans violence we've seen, particularly mass shootings over the past couple of years. And while it gave me a number, it then couched it and all these things like, well, just so you know, there's less trans violence than there is cisgender violence, which I didn't ask for, by the way, and also, by the way, is not true when it comes to mass shootings. But yes.
And also not true when you look at percentages. That's the key point. Of course, there's going to be more cis, if you're going to use that language. But we're talking about a very small percentage of the population that is overrepresented in these sorts of crimes, particularly in the last few years, Ami. And I think denying that it is part of the problem. If we're going to actually be tackling these issues in any meaningful way, we need to be having uncomfortable conversations centred on the truth. And that was really what Charlie Kirk was all about.
That's right, and they want to hide the truth. And the last point I'll make about the trans violence is that there is and I'll go quickly to Kirk himself and the lies about him, but they do want to push the agenda of trans people being killed in significantly larger numbers than cis people, which is simply not true. I actually did the work on this. I looked into it over the past couple of years, and there've only been a very, very small handful of trans people who had been murdered because they were trans. And by the way, the vast majority of them were black women killed by black men. There is not a single example that I could find, Rita, of a MAGA supporter, of a Trump supporter, killing a trans person. Yet this is the narrative being pushed by the media, which leads to this culture of self-aggrievance that we've seen, which leads to this violence that we saw with Charlie Kirk, right? Because that was the lie made about him. So yes, the lies about Charlie Kirk are legion. They're so significant, in fact, that factcheck.org, a leftist organization which lies all the time, including about me, including about Sky News Australia, had to actually do a list of things that were lied about Charlie Kirk because so much of it was out there. They called him, for example, a white supremacist. He was the opposite of a white supremacist, right? He fought and kicked out a group from Turning Point called the Groypers, who are actually white supremacists. He was called... Stephen King, whose books, by the way, I will never read again, said he wanted to stone gay people. Another massive, scurrilous lie against him. They talked about his Asian hate. Zero. Untrue. And they talked about his anti-Semitism. And as a Jew, I think my antennas are kind of up about that. He was a supporter of Israel. He was a philo-Semite, Rita. And the only example they can use for him saying something anti-Semitic was he said Jewish money was involved in liberal causes, causing more anti-Semitism. Fact check, true, not anti-Semitic. Things that are true are not racist or anti-Semitic. They are what we call facts.
Absolutely. And as on Asians, and I can speak about that, he was a huge campaigner for having some sort of meritocracy in the entrance systems of universities, because Asians are amongst the biggest group who are disadvantaged when you are not getting in on merit, on what your academic achievement is, but what minority box other than Asian that you're ticking. Now, Tyler Robinson is facing the death penalty. Tell me about the charges he faced today and the FBI's efforts in particular to uncover anyone else who may have been complicit in this act of political violence.
Yeah, he's charged with a number of things, including the capital felony of aggrieved murder, which is the single largest charge you could have in Utah, which is basically it can range from the death sentence to life imprisonment. And by the way, I'm not sure, while I'm certainly a supporter of the death penalty in certain cases, and I think this might in fact be one of the cases I would support it in, because he wasn't just trying to kill somebody, he was trying to start a war. He's trying to tear the fabric of this country apart by this killing. But I'm not sure which is worse, which is him having the death penalty or sitting in jail for, since he's 21, maybe upwards of 70 years, watching what he tried to kill actually take root in this country and bloom. And I'm talking about the ideals of Charlie Kirk. We've seen across the world, not just the country, the world, people picking up the mantle of Charlie Kirk. So maybe it'll be worse for him to see that live for the rest of his long life in jail. I'm not sure. But I think what's even more interesting, because I think with Tyler Robinson, it's pretty clear cut. The evidence seems, in terms of DNA evidence, it all seems that he will, in fact, be prosecuted and he will go to jail or be killed for this. But I think what's interesting is the FBI is looking into accomplices or people who've actually hid the evidence, right? And I think that if you go into this chat group that he had, I think a lot of things start happening. First of all, chalk this up to things on the internet never go away, folks. You may try to delete it, but how dumb are you not to know that this thing is still sitting on some server somewhere in the air? But I guess they don't know how tech works, even though they're all, kind of involved in the tech world, right? In the gaming world. But look, there are numerous examples of these people talking as long as a month before this exact date of Charlie Kirk's assassination. So that's either an incredible coincidence.
I have seen
and I
that.
don't really believe in incredible coincidence, or they knew something in advance. And I think this is all going to come out because at the least,
I think the FBI. I think the FBI is going to track down every single lead. They're not going to leave a single stone unturned. Ami Horowitz, thank you so much for your time tonight.